He raised a hatchling-sized beast into a stellar apex predator. Now even princesses kneel. The cavern's walls shimmered with a cold azure light, casting shifting patterns across the rough stone. Ethan Soren crouched beside a crystalline outcrop, his breath fogging the visor of his helmet, hands unsteady as he adjusted the analyzer. Nearly 4 years marooned on this forsaken research post, a punishment for defying the consortium's infallible taxonomy, had left him with little hope. Yet here, at last, was something impossible. "No way," he muttered, fingers dancing over the controls. The analyzer's scanner emitted a low hum as spectral readings flashed across his visor. He double-checked, then triple-checked, eyes wide. Embedded in the crystal was an egg, its surface a deep obsidian, veined with glowing blue lines. It pulsed, faintly alive, displaying energy signatures wholly unlisted in any catalog he had ever seen. He brushed away a thin layer of frost, heart hammering as the egg thrummed beneath his gloved fingertips. Consortium regulations demanded immediate reporting of any unknown life, especially on a world this isolated, where every anomaly could mean a planetary threat. But rules had ruined him before. The chain of command had torn his reputation apart, left him exiled and nearly forgotten. A hairline crack appeared on the egg's glossy shell. He jerked back, pulse quickening. A gentle snap echoed through the cavern. The egg split open, fragments sliding to the ground with crystalline chimes. Ethan watched, barely daring to breathe, as something emerged from the heart of the crystal. A creature, no larger than a house cat, uncurled itself. Its skin was sapphire dark, glimmering with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and flowed in hypnotic waves. Eyes, a striking crimson with elliptical pupils, stared up at him, unblinking. Ethan's throat tightened. "A luminous sovereign," he breathed. The name felt both reverent and dangerous. Myths told of predators that could outwit warlords and bring down starships, supposedly extinct for generations. Yet here was a hatchling, trembling on uncertain limbs, blinking in the pale light. The creature uttered a sound between a chirp and a growl, stepping cautiously toward him, talons barely making a sound on the stone. Ethan remained still, every muscle tensed. Even newborn, a sovereign was apex, a living legend. The beast's nose twitched, and then, to Ethan's shock, it nudged the analyzer, pressing its smooth, scaled head into his palm. "You're not the terror they say you are," he whispered, voice trembling with awe and relief. The creature sniffed him, then pressed closer, drawn by the warmth of his body and the hum of his nervous system. His calm crackled, harsh and sudden, making him jump. The creature hissed, shrinking back slightly. "Soren, status check," came Dr. Mira Lauren's clipped voice. "Your beacon hasn't moved in hours." Ethan's mind spun, calculating. He could hand the creature over, let it become a specimen or a prize, and maybe claw his way back into the consortium's good graces, or he could lie. "Just cataloging mineral samples, nothing notable," he said, striving for boredom. "Copy. Get back before nightfall. Protocol's protocol." Mira's tone softened a hair. "Don't freeze to death out there." The link snapped off. Ethan exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. He watched as the creature began to explore, padding around on oversized paws, batting at loose stones with curious claws. It moved with a clumsy grace, bioluminescent patterns flickering in rhythm with its pulse. Every protocol screamed at him to report it. Every instinct begged him to protect it. Instead, he shrugged off his pack, pulled out a spare thermal wrap, and fashioned a nest. "I don't know if I'm saving you or dooming myself," he murmured, guiding the beast inside. It curled up, eyes half-lidded, trusting him completely. He zipped the pack, holding it close. "Cobalt," he whispered, naming it for the color that danced across its skin. We'll figure this out together. Maybe, just maybe, this secret would redeem his lost reputation. What he couldn't know, this choice would one day shake the stars. 6 months later, Cobalt had grown from kitten-sized to majestic, now rivaling a large wolf in size. Ethan observed from a hidden overlook, a makeshift blind of camouflaged tarps and sensor baffles. Below, in a secluded valley he'd claimed as a training ground, Cobalt stalked through the dusk, bioluminescent patterns rippling in liquid motion across his flanks. "Let's see what you've got," Ethan called, tapping a control on his wrist. A drone buzzed to life, zigzagging above the valley floor. Cobalt's head snapped up, crimson eyes locking onto the target. Without a sound, he coiled and leapt, 10 meters in a single fluid bound. Jaws closed around the drone, wings flaring for balance. He landed, silent as a shadow, then padded over, dropping the battered drone at Ethan's feet. "Not bad," Ethan grinned, scratching behind a curved horn, careful of the gemstone-hard ridges along Cobalt's skull. "We'll work on returning things undamaged, all right?" Cobalt rumbled, a throaty sound halfway between a purr and a challenge, before butting Ethan's chest with his head. Ethan laughed, the sound echoing off the valley walls. Then his comm shrieked, urgent. "Soren, report to base. Consortium audit shuttle arriving in 25 minutes. Ethan's heart pounded. He glanced at Cobalt, who tensed, bioluminescent lines flickering in warning. "Hide, okay?" he whispered. Cobalt's gaze lingered, then he melted into the rocks and brush, camouflaged in an instant. The base was a hive of nervous energy when Ethan arrived. Personnel hustled through the corridors, securing doors and stowing research. Dr. Mira Lorne intercepted him at the entryway, eyes sharp as she assessed the blue scales clinging to his sleeve. "Where were you?" she hissed, helping him slip into a clean jacket. "And why are you covered in scales?" Ethan brushed at his sleeve, feigning annoyance. "Got too close to a lizard nest in the West Caves," he said. Mira narrowed her eyes, but didn't push. They'd shared too many sidelong glances, too many silent mutinies against the consortium's endless rules. The inspection team arrived, their shuttle's ramp hissing open. 4 guards in black and silver armor led the way, forming a wall of muscle and menace. Behind them strode a striking figure, moving with feline grace, chin high and eyes scanning every detail. She was tall, her skin a radiant azure blue, traced with glowing circuit-like patterns that shifted as she moved. Curved horns, adorned with gemstones, swept back from her brow, and folded wings draped her shoulders like a regal cloak. Her gaze, crimson, intense, fixed on Ethan the moment she entered. "Dr. Soren," she said, her voice both smooth and commanding. "I am Lysara Valen, biological auditor for the consortium." Recognition jolted through him. The royal sigil on her brow marked her as more than a bureaucrat. She was consortium nobility. Dangerous. Lysara's eyes never left him. "We're interested in your unpublished findings," she said, each word a blade, "especially any recent anomalies." Ethan swallowed, leading her through his lab, the years of hiding the truth making his lies flow easily. "Nothing remarkable," he said, showing her his officially sanctioned research. Endless mineral reports, population studies, nothing that hinted at cobalt. Lysara traced a finger along his desk, her touch lingering on a data pad. "Your theories on apex neural adaptation got you exiled," she murmured. "I found them provocative." Ethan tried to keep his expression neutral, but his pulse hammered in his ears. "Just speculation," he replied, voice flat. Her lips curved in a knowing smile. "Specimens would prove everything." Before he could respond, alarms blared, red lights strobing through the halls. "Perimeter breach, Sector 9, unknown biological entity detected." Ice shot through Ethan's veins. Sector 9 bordered Cobalt's Valley. Lysara's hand moved to a concealed weapon, her composure slipping into something predatory. "What's in Sector 9, Dr. Soren?" Ethan's mind raced for a lie, but before he could answer, Dr. Lorne burst in, eyes wide. "Ethan, you need to see this." Security footage flickered on a nearby screen. Razor wire fence torn asunder, local predators scattering in panic. In the chaos, a sapphire-dark form flashed. Cobalt, defending his ground. Now the terrified survivors were stampeding straight toward the base. "Lockdown!" Ethan shouted, urgency snapping through his voice as he bolted for the exit. He had to find Cobalt before Lysara's team did. The base erupted in chaos as blast doors slammed shut, reverberating through the concrete and steel. Sirens blared, lights flashed blood red, and staff sprinted down corridors, arms full of emergency kits, scientific gear, and weapons. Ethan pushed his way through the swarm, heart pounding. Every hallway was alive with fear and protocol, but his destination was singular, his private lab. He ducked past two technicians wrestling a specimen case into a vault and nearly collided with Lysara. She stepped into his path, blocking him with an elegance that left no doubt of her authority. "I'll accompany you," she said, tone final. Her gaze dared him to protest. Ethan suppressed a retort. He simply nodded, swiping his access card at the sealed door. The lock disengaged with a heavy thunk, and they stepped inside. The moment the door slid shut, the world muffled. Only the distant rumbles and alarms penetrated the silence. He crossed quickly to his workbench, grabbing decoy samples and stuffing them into a transport case. His hand slipped behind a row of labeled vials, fingers finding the hidden switch. He pressed it, feeling the familiar buzz as the hidden command activated. A silent signal pulsed through the base's network, prepping his escape protocols. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling panels as a deep, guttural impact shook the lab. Lysara's eyes narrowed. "That's not a native predator," she observed, voice calm but watchful. She moved closer to a monitor and flicked through security feeds with practiced fingers. Ethan craned his neck, searching for a sign, any sign, that Cobalt was still out there. The external camera blinked into focus. In the dim glow of emergency lights, a massive silhouette prowled the edge of the compound. Cobalt, his scales now a tapestry of blue and violet bioluminescence, loomed in the shadows, standing between the base and the encroaching chaos. Feral eyes shone like coals in the dark. "Your creature is protecting us," Lysara said coolly. There was something almost approving in her tone. "The luminous sovereign, it's not attacking, it's guarding." She cocked her head, smiling faintly. "From you?" Ethan schooled his face, feigning confusion. "I have no idea what you're talking about." But Lysara's eyes were unyielding. "Don't insult my intelligence, Doctor. You've bonded with it, haven't you? The myths never did it justice. The stories said they were monsters, yet yours chooses to defend." He hesitated, words tangling in his throat. His comm buzzed. "Mira, 3 sharp pulses." The transport was ready. His escape window was now. "If you want to meet him, now's the time," Ethan said. He moved quickly to the wall panel and thumbed the override. The lab's outer door groaned and slid open, revealing a corridor wreathed in emergency light. Lysara drew her sidearm in a fluid motion, but kept it angled away from him. She took position by the doorway, every muscle taut. A low growl rumbled from the darkness. Crimson eyes flickered in the gloom, followed by the undulating glow of Cobalt's patterns. He filled the entrance, head lowered, body coiled in anticipation. Ethan stepped forward, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "He doesn't like weapons pointed at me," he said quietly, watching Cobalt's hackles rise. To his surprise, Lysara holstered her weapon without hesitation. She never broke eye contact with the beast. "Impressive. You've done what our best trainers failed to do, bonded with the galaxy's deadliest predator." Cobalt's growl softened, the bioluminescence on his flanks pulsing in recognition of Ethan's voice. He stepped forward, nose brushing Ethan's shoulder, eyes never leaving Lysara. Lysara straightened, regal. "Come with me to House Valen as a guest, or resist and watch us seize your creation." Her tone was both invitation and threat, silk-wrapped steel. Cobalt's response was immediate. A low, warning snarl, hackles rising. The air crackled with static. "I think there's a third way," Ethan said, voice steady. Lysara's eyes narrowed. "There are no third ways with House Valen." "You're mistaken," Ethan replied, squaring his shoulders. "I'm not refusing. I'm negotiating." An explosion rocked the base, sending shards of ceiling tiles clattering to the floor. Lysara's comm blared with urgent reports. Voices shouted, "Mercenaries! Rival house! Docking bay compromised!" Ethan gestured to the door, adrenaline surging. "My transport's ready. Stay and fight or come with us. But I'm not leaving Cobalt, and he won't let you take him." Lysara's lips twisted in a wry smile. "You think I trust you?" "No," Ethan said, meeting her gaze. "But you want Cobalt, and he goes where I go." Another blast, brighter, closer. The lights died, plunging them into darkness broken only by the living glow of Cobalt's patterns. The Sovereign's massive form was a shield between them and the corridor beyond. "Your choice, Auditor Valen. Or should I say Princess Lysara?" Ethan said, voice low. Surprise flickered across her face. "How did you—" "Royal sigil, genetic markers, the way the guards defer to you," he said, almost smiling. "Xenobiologist, remember?" She regarded him anew, weighing something behind those crimson eyes. Then she nodded, decisive. "Very well. Lead on, Doctor." They slipped out of the lab, Cobalt moving ahead, every sense attuned to the threat. The corridors were a storm of confusion, panicked staff, shouting security, the distant thud of weapons fire. Twice, Lysara intercepted consortium soldiers, barking crisp orders that sent them scurrying in the opposite direction. Ethan moved with purpose, Mira's signal guiding him through the maze. As they reached the loading bay, the doors slid open to reveal Mira waiting by a modified hauler. Her hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat, and her hands shook on the control pad. She spotted Lysara, eyes wide as saucers. "Royalty complication," Ethan explained, hustling toward the hauler. "Understatement," Mira muttered, glancing nervously at Lysara. She stared even harder at Cobalt, who loomed protectively behind Ethan, every inch the apex predator. Weapons fire raked the sky outside, streaks of plasma lighting the night. A rival house's mercenary ships landed on the far side of the base, their insignias bold and unfamiliar. The air was thick with smoke and static. Cobalt crouched and slunk into the hauler, making himself as small as possible, his patterns dimming to match the shadows. Ethan vaulted into the cockpit, Mira taking the co-pilot seat. Lysara climbed in last, eyes never leaving Cobalt. The hauler's engines whined, spooling up as the loading ramp retracted. As the engines thundered, Lysara grabbed Ethan's arm, her grip vice-like. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice raw. "Not credits or protection? What's your price?" Ethan met her gaze, the fires of 100 betrayals burning in his eyes. The truth about the luminous sovereign. Why were they wiped out? Lysara's eyes flickered, something ancient and haunted passing across her features. "Careful what you wish for, Doctor." The hauler jerked skyward as Mira gunned the engines. Mercenary fire lanced past, splintering rock and glass, but the hauler surged over the perimeter, skimming the wilds beyond the base. Ethan looked out over the world he'd called exile, now fleeing with both his greatest secret and the most dangerous ally in the system. "Set course for the Outlands," he ordered, voice steady. Mira nodded, hands dancing over the controls. Lysara settled into the jump seat beside him, crimson eyes burning with secrets. "You have no idea what you're involved in," she said, her voice low and urgent. The luminous sovereign weren't just predators, they were engineered by the ancients. Their genetics activate planetary systems, the power to heal or destroy worlds. The revelation hung between them, charged and electric, as the hauler roared away from the burning compound into the unknown. 3 tense days in the cramped hauler brought little rest for anyone. Even when Ethan dozed in the navigation chair, the drone of the engines and the constant flicker of sensor alerts kept him half awake. He stared at star maps projected across the dashboard, eyes gritty and mind restless, recalculating courses with every update from consortium channels. Lysara paced the cockpit behind him, her movements precise and feline, shadows rippling over the metallic blue of her skin. Her horns nearly brushed the ceiling. "The Outlands are consortium territory," she warned for the third time that day, tension sharpening her regal voice. "Patrols will hunt us. They will not stop." Ethan didn't look away from the display. "Not where we're headed." He tapped a region on the holo map, causing it to zoom in on a sector of ragged moons and forgotten debris fields. He highlighted an abandoned refinery, half submerged in the dust rings of a minor planet. Lysara leaned in, her presence almost electric. Her scent, cool, metallic, tinged with wild ozone, distracted him. Her luminous skin glimmered inches from his cheek. "Clever," she murmured. "But what's your plan, Soren? You can't hide Cobalt forever." As if summoned, a low, resonant rumble echoed through the comm system, the unmistakable voice of Cobalt reverberating from the cargo hold. The beast had grown restless in the confines of the ship, pacing, the deck plating vibrating with each footfall. Ethan shut off the display and turned to Lysara. "I'm not hiding him. I'm protecting him. Now about that ancient tech. What exactly did your ancestors know?" Lysara's expression shifted, decision flashing in her crimson eyes. "Come with me." She turned and led him out of the cockpit, past Mira's weary glare in the galley, down to her private quarters. The room was Spartan, just a cot, a storage locker, and a small shrine to House Valen. She knelt and unlocked the shrine, retrieving an object wrapped in silk. She held out an old data prism, its facets catching the scant light. "This holds everything House Valen knows about the luminous sovereign and the ancients. But there's a price, Ethan." He studied her, searching for the catch. "What does House Valen want? A specimen? A weapon?" She shook her head, the mask of royalty slipping, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. "Not the house, me. I want access to Cobalt, not as a specimen, not for conquest, as hope for my dying home, Solaris." Ethan's breath caught. Beneath her measured words, he heard longing, years of struggle and isolation, not unlike his own. "Your world, Solaris, poisoned since the solar collapse. You think Cobalt can change that?" She met his gaze, voice trembling at the edges. "I know he can." Their hands met over the prism, fingers brushing. A spark jumped between them, brief but electric. "He's more than a legend to you," Ethan murmured. Lysara's lips curved, sad and resolute. "To my people, he's the only chance left." Ethan slotted the prism into his analyzer. Hollow screens bloomed in the air. Ancient diagrams, layered biological readouts, genetic matrices spiraling like nebulae. A schematic of the luminous sovereign flickered into focus, internal organs interwoven with crystalline filaments, neural nets branching like the roots of a star tree. "This is..." Ethan's voice trailed off, awe overtaking him. "The original blueprint," Lysara confirmed, watching his face. The sovereigns weren't just predators. They were designed as living planetary engines. Their minds could interface with ancient systems, terraforming, weather control, planetary healing. Ethan scrolled through the data, every page a revelation. "They're the most valuable beings in the galaxy, and the most dangerous." Lysara's voice softened, a thread of sadness woven through her words. That's why most would use them for conquest, not renewal. But not me. A metallic clang rang out from the hold, vibrating through the deck. Mira's voice crackled over the intercom, tense and breathless. Ethan, get down here. Something's happening with Cobalt. The two of them bolted, racing through the corridor. Ethan keyed open the bulkhead to the hold. Lysara closed behind. Cobalt prowled in circles, his bioluminescent patterns shifting rapidly from blue to violet to deep crimson. His eyes burned, fixed on a point somewhere beyond the walls. He's sensing something, Lysara whispered, stepping closer, not flinching as Cobalt's tail lashed dangerously near her legs. Mira stood against the far wall, clutching a diagnostic pad. We're nowhere near a beacon or a node. There's nothing on the charts. Lysara shook her head. They're not on any charts. Ancient nodes were hidden, even from the consortium. Cobalt's body thrummed with mounting energy. Control panels flickered, navigation screens glitching. We're changing course, Mira called from the comm station. Something's controlling the ship. I can't override. Ethan watched as the navigation route bent, the ship veering away from the refinery. Cobalt's patterns pulsed in time with the ship's new trajectory, blue, violet, white, like a living code. He's not doing this by choice, Lysara said, her voice urgent. The node is calling him. It's broadcasting on a frequency only his kind can feel. Space outside the viewport twisted, stars stretching and blurring as if the universe itself bent to Cobalt's will. Then, abruptly, the distortion cleared. Before them, floating amidst the nebulae, was a colossal crystalline citadel. Its facets gleamed with internal light, towers spiraling skyward, its sheer scale dwarfing the hauler. An untouched ancient station, Lysara breathed, wonder etched across her face. I never thought I'd see one with my own eyes. The hauler's controls responded to no one. It glided toward a docking bay that opened like the iris of an enormous eye. They docked with a soft shudder, drawn by invisible hands. As soon as the maglocks engaged, Cobalt calmed, his patterns steadying into a soft blue glow. Mira exhaled, knuckles white on the armrest. We shouldn't be here. Consortium ships have standing orders to destroy ancient sites on sight. Too late, Ethan replied, breathless with anticipation and fear. Lysara moved to Ethan's side, her awe barely contained. With this station and Cobalt, we could restore Solaris. Or break the consortium's grip on habitable worlds entirely. Ethan glanced at her, seeing something new, a hope that transcended politics, that reached for redemption rather than power. You never meant to give Cobalt to your fiancé, did you? A shadow crossed Lysara's face. Kael would use him for war, she admitted, voice low. My betrothed. He dreams of conquest, not healing. Jealousy flared in Ethan, sharp and unexpected. Before he could speak, a deep chime sounded. A hatch in the deck slid open beneath Cobalt. The Sovereign stared into the darkness, then descended, vanishing into the station. Ethan grabbed his analyzer, urgency rising. We have to follow. Mira, stay with the ship. If we're not back in 6 hours, get out of here and warn someone. Mira nodded, eyes wide but resolute. Lysara caught Ethan's arm, her grip fierce. The system will scan our genetics. If we're not compatible... Ethan met her gaze, determination burning in his eyes. I know the risks, but we have to try. Wordlessly, Lysara removed her sigil, the symbol of her house, letting it fall to the deck. She faced him, stripped of all rank and pretense. Ready? Ethan asked, extending his hand. Lysara's blue fingers entwined with his, her touch cool and trembling. Together they stepped into the unknown, following the only hope left, for Solaris, for the galaxy, and perhaps for themselves. Inside, the station defied all logic. Ethan stepped through the portal and felt the world tilt beneath him, A corridor twisted impossibly upward, the floor sloping into a spiral, walls morphing from slick, glassy smoothness to rippling metallic scales as they passed. Gravity shifted underfoot, growing lighter and heavier in dizzying pulses. Light streamed from unseen sources, flickering between indigo and silver, shimmering across the strange glyphs that adorned every surface. Cobalt led the way, head high, and bioluminescent patterns flaring with every stride. The very architecture seemed to respond to his presence. Doors unfurled, panels slid aside, the path ahead illuminating in anticipation of each step. Behind him, Lysara moved with measured awe, fingertips tracing the glowing symbols that pulsed softly along the walls. "These glyphs match those from Solaris," she whispered, voice trembling as she followed a swirling line of light with her hand. "I used to dream of them when I was a child. My father said they were only stories." Ethan followed her gaze, recording everything with his analyzer. Every inch of the place pulsed with ancient power, every shadow seemed alive. They pressed on, deeper, until the corridor widened and the ceiling began to stretch and dissolve above their heads. They entered a vast chamber, domed and breathtaking. The ceiling peeled back in translucent petals, revealing a cosmic panorama. Entire star systems spun in holographic relief, planets orbiting miniature suns, nebulae blossoming in swaths of color. The chamber's floor was a mosaic of shifting constellations. The air itself thrummed with energy. Cobalt moved to the center of the chamber. As he did, the ambient light pulsed in synchrony with the glowing circuit patterns that wove through his dark hide. He stood absolutely still, eyes half-lidded, as if listening to a music only he could hear. "He's syncing with the system," Lysara breathed. "It's teaching him, showing him everything." Ethan's hands shook as he recorded the spectacle. Star maps rotated above them, worlds highlighted by beams of pale light. Data cascaded across the chamber's circumference in ancient script, untranslatable, but Cobalt's crimson eyes tracked every flickering symbol, absorbing knowledge far beyond human comprehension. "These are dormant planetary nodes," Lysara realized, voice rising in awe as she pointed to clusters of shimmering spheres. "Look, that's Solaris. There!" A planet flared to life among the others, its surface shifting from a scarred wasteland to a vision of lush valleys and blue oceans. The chamber responded, projecting her homeworld's renewal in vivid, impossible detail. Mountains green with forests, skies clear and bright, cities shining with new hope. Lysara's composure finally broke. She reached for the image, hand trembling, tears glimmering unshed in her crimson eyes. Ethan stepped to her side, his own breath caught in his throat. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned, their faces close in the spectral light. In that moment, the universe shrank, leaving only the two of them, an outcast scientist and a royal exile, bound by hope and a shared vision of rebirth. Cobalt let out a resonant call, a sound that echoed in both mind and matter. The chamber responded at once, the holographic stars shivering. A cylindrical console rose from the floor, humming with contained energy, the top embedded with a crystal that glowed in time with Cobalt's bioluminescence. "It needs genetic confirmation to activate," Lysara said, regaining her composure with effort. She stepped closer, voice taut with anticipation. "That's how the ancients protected their technology." Ethan circled the console, gaze fixed on the pulsing crystal. "What happens if we do?" "All nodes could awaken," Lysara replied, her voice carrying both hope and dread. "Restoring worlds, or weaponizing them. The power to heal or destroy entire planets." Her gaze hardened, resolve returning. "The consortium can never control this, Ethan. Kyle would demand loyalty from every world, grant life only to the obedient. He'd make himself emperor by holding the keys to survival." Before Ethan could answer, his comm crackled. Mira's voice was tight, urgent. Consortium warship in orbit. They're scanning us. Their drive signatures match Kale's flagship. Cobalt growled, mane bristling. In response, energy arced through the station's walls, defense grids activating, shields blooming to life. The chamber's holograms flickered, warning glyphs rippling across the floor. We must choose, Ethan said, glancing between Lysara and the crystal. Unlock the tech now and risk everything, or run. Lysara stepped to the console, mind racing. There's another way, she said suddenly. We can take the core with us. She pointed to the crystal, now pulsing faster. If we remove it, the station goes dormant. We choose where and when to use the technology. Ethan stared at the crystal, then at Cobalt. Can he bypass the security? Only if you're fully bonded, Lysara replied. The system won't let just anyone take the key. You have to trust each other completely. Cobalt padded forward, meeting Ethan's eyes. The trust between them was palpable, hard-won through months of secrecy, survival, and shared dreams. The crystal's glow intensified, responding to their connection. Lysara's hand found Ethan's in the dimness. Her fingers were cool and strong, trembling just slightly. Together? Ethan nodded, heart pounding. Together. They reached for the crystal. The moment their hands touched it, light and sensation exploded through them, an electric torrent of visions, memories, and futures unfurling all at once. They saw civilizations rise and fall, planets scorched and reborn, the luminous sovereign walking among stars as both guardians and destroyers. They saw Solaris, healed and thriving. They saw the consortium's tyranny, entire worlds bent in servitude. The vision faded as the crystal detached with a sharp chime. The station shuddered, alarms blaring. Lights strobed red and white, the chamber's projections collapsing into chaos. We need to go, Lysara urged, tucking the crystal into a pouch at her side. Cobalt's bioluminescence flickered erratically. He was still linked to the system, held fast by invisible threads. We have to break the connection, Ethan said, desperation in his voice. He turned to Lysara. The crystal. Let him touch it. Without hesitation, Lysara pressed the crystal to Cobalt's curved horn. Energy surged, a brilliant arc of light connecting beast and artifact. Cobalt roared, the sound shaking the chamber. The link severed. Cobalt staggered, then crouched low, wings unfurling in a shimmer of blue and violet. He wants us to ride, Ethan realized, breathless. Lysara mounted first, moving with fluid, practiced grace. Ethan climbed behind her, arms encircling her waist. The contact sent a jolt of energy through them both, wild and intimate. Cobalt dashed through the morphing corridors, each stride faster than the last. The station's defenses triggered too late, shields dropping and doors slamming as he tore through, a living key overriding every ancient lock. They burst into the docking bay, Mira waving frantically from the open ramp of the hauler. The ship, straight ahead, Ethan called, voice rising over the alarms. Cobalt leapt, clearing the gap and landing with feline precision on the loading ramp. Go! Ethan shouted as the doors slammed shut behind them. Mira punched the launch, engines screaming as the hauler tore from the bay. Outside, consortium weapons locked on, targeting sensors flashing. The comm blared, Kael's voice booming with imperial fury. This is Admiral Kael Drast. Surrender or be boarded immediately. Lysara froze, crimson eyes wide, the crystal glowing between her hands. He'll take everything, for conquest, not healing, she whispered. Ethan opened the comm, voice calm and certain. We need a distraction. Cobalt's patterns blazed, the crystal in Lysara's grip resonating in harmony. Deep within the ancient station, defensive arrays powered up. Energy cannons fired, lancing out in arcs of light, disabling the consortium cruiser's engines and weapons in a single, elegant salvo. That's our chance, Ethan said, plotting a course on the nav display. Mira, get us out of here. Kale's voice cut through the calm, thunderous with betrayal. Lysara, this treason will not go unpunished. You've doomed everything we built. Lysara lifted her chin, meeting Ethan's gaze, voice unwavering. This isn't treason, Kale. It's freedom. With a single gesture, she cut the link. The ship jumped to hyperspace, stars stretching into lines of light. In the cockpit, Lysara's hand found Ethan's, the crystal nestled between their palms. She leaned close, her voice a whisper in the roaring silence. Somewhere we can make a stand. Half a year passed. The abandoned facility on Nexus 6 had become something more than a refuge. It was their base, their sanctuary, and now a beacon. Rumors of miracles rippled out into the void, attracting attention from every corner of consortium space. From the observation deck, Ethan watched shuttles and sleek diplomatic cruisers arrive, their hulls emblazoned with the crests of a dozen worlds. Delegations filed out in solemn procession, bearing the banners of houses that had once warred for scraps of dying planets. Ethan's gaze drifted over the tumult below. Security drones hovered along the causeway, Mira's team standing vigilant as envoys in silks and armor crossed the threshold. The air was charged, expectant, tense, and hungry for hope. Anxious? Lysara's voice broke his reverie. She appeared at his side, regal even in the utilitarian cut of her uniform. Her ceremonial horns were bare of jewels, but her bearing was more commanding than ever. Ethan gave a crooked smile, nerves raw behind his eyes. Terrified, he admitted, voice quiet. Lysara's lips twitched, betraying the ghost of a smile. I was raised for diplomacy, but never for this. I can recite 700 lines of House Valen protocol. None of them prepared me to stand before the galaxy as an exile and a rebel. Her mask slipped, just for him, and he saw her own fears, mirrored in the way her hands clenched the railing. Down below, Mira moved among the arriving delegates, offering sharp nods and clipped instructions. The main hall doors parted, and all eyes turned to the center where Cobalt waited. A living legend, the luminous sovereign now fully grown. Cobalt was magnificent. His sapphire black hide gleamed, bioluminescent patterns pulsing beneath the skin, circuit-like filaments woven seamlessly with ancient technology. His wings, vast and iridescent, were folded regally behind him. Those crimson eyes watched everything, intelligence burning bright. He was no longer just a secret. They all knew what he was. Ethan exhaled, tension thick in his chest. House Valen's bounty is high, he murmured, eyes tracking the familiar insignias of rival houses among the crowd. Lysara's lips curved in a wry smile. 3 houses are here anyway. The balance has shifted. After Solaris's rebirth, they know we can heal or deny. Power isn't what it was. It was true. The core crystal, once hidden, now bonded to Cobalt, had become the control matrix for miracles. With it, they could reach out to the ancient nodes, reviving entire planetary systems. The choice of who to save, who to trust, was no longer political. It was personal. Kael's coalition is splintering, Lysara said quietly, her gaze scanning the arriving diplomats. 3 houses have already withdrawn support. Even their war fleets are fracturing. Ethan turned to her, seeing not the exile or the princess, but the woman who had risked everything for a better future. Any regrets? He asked, voice barely more than a whisper. Lysara stepped closer, her voice gentle but steady. I haven't abandoned my people, Ethan. I found a better way to save them, without conquest, without deceit. She reached for his hand, her touch warm and sure. When this began, I only saw necessity. Now, she met his eyes, letting her own hope show. I see partnership, respect, and something more. He squeezed her hand, the silent confession echoing between them. A chime sounded over the comm, Mira's voice was brisk, but Ethan caught the hint of excitement beneath her professionalism. The delegates are ready. It's time. Ethan and Lysara exchanged a look, equal parts anticipation and dread. Together they descended from the observation deck, passing through reinforced corridors hung with banners and makeshift tapestries. The hall was already crowded when they entered. Scientists, diplomats, and nobles alike filled the space, their voices hushed as Cobalt's presence dominated the room. The luminous sovereign stood at the central platform, scales threaded with circuitry, his patterns interfacing directly with the crystal matrix. The control core hovered before him, spinning slowly, casting prismatic light across the assembly. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. You've all seen the data from Solaris's restoration. Today you will witness it firsthand. No more rumors, only proof. He nodded to Lysara, who faced the assembly with the authority of her birthright and the conviction of her rebellion. This technology belongs to no one. It was built to heal worlds, worlds that our ancestors and our enemies alike have ruined with war and greed. It cannot be owned. It will not be weaponized. She gestured, and a display behind them flickered to life, showing the image of Solaris, its surface still shrouded in toxic clouds, a world on the knife's edge. The delegates leaned forward, hungry for the spectacle. Today we begin its renewal, Lysara declared, voice unwavering, the weight of centuries in every syllable. Not as conquerors, but as custodians. Cobalt approached the platform. The crystal flared, humming with power, its resonance matching the sovereign's pulse. Ethan watched as the delegates shifted, some awestruck, others suspicious. A delegate from House Valen's old rival stepped forward. "What do you demand in return?" he asked, suspicion thick in his accent. Ethan and Lysara exchanged glances. The moment they'd prepared for was here. "Recognition of autonomy," Ethan said, meeting the gaze of each envoy in turn. "For us, for Cobalt, and for any restored world. No more vassal states, no more consortium decrees. Only free peoples." "You're asking us to give up control," another delegate protested, voice sharp with old fear. "We're not asking," Lysara replied, her voice cold as starlight. "Accept this new reality, or step aside. The power to heal is not a weapon for rulers. It is hope for the broken." Cobalt's bioluminescent patterns intensified. He reared his head, the crystal matrix glowing brighter, filling the chamber with a low, harmonic vibration. Ethan touched a control on his wrist, initializing the process. The hall thrummed as the ancient system activated. Holographic projections danced overhead, streams of data, planetary schematics, the living network of nodes stretching from Nexus to Solaris and beyond. The delegates gasped as, on the central display, Solaris began to transform. Toxic clouds parted, green and blue surged across the surface, rivers cut fresh paths through once dead plains. Life swept in waves, flora, then fauna, then cities rekindled with new light. A hush fell. One by one, nobles and scientists knelt, not to Ethan or Lysara, but to the new power manifest, the possibility to reshape worlds, to choose renewal over ruin. Ethan looked at Lysara. The fear and loneliness that had once haunted both of them were gone, replaced by something deeper, trust, and a promise forged in fire and hope. He took her hand. The crystal gleamed between them, alive with possibility. "Together," Lysara whispered, her voice a vow. "Together," Ethan answered, his words carrying them forward. Partners in a future neither could have imagined, architects of a new destiny written in the light of reborn worlds. A new era dawned. News of Solaris's rebirth rippled through the stars, carried on every comm channel, whispered in spaceport cantinas, broadcast from palace towers. Worlds long scarred by greed and war turned their eyes to Nexus 6, to the impossible, made real. Ethan and Lysara's alliance, anchored by the living legend of Cobalt, became a beacon of hope and a rallying point for empires teetering between old rivalries and the promise of renewal. Envoys came in droves. Some brought battered trade ships, others gleaming diplomatic barges. They came with desperate requests or carefully crafted treaties, not with threats. The crystal at the heart of the rebirth, once an artifact of forgotten ancients, was now a symbol of something new, a chance to heal, to belong, to begin again. Yet amid the momentum of a galaxy shifting, there were rare, precious pauses. In their private quarters, Ethan and Lysara found each other beyond titles and duties. The wide window overlooked the reclaimed valley, moonlight spilling over new forests and rivers, Cobalt's massive silhouette prowling the hills below. Even in repose, the sovereign's bioluminescent patterns shimmered faintly, a silent sentinel beneath the twin moons. Most nights, exhaustion claimed them before they ever reached the bed. But this night was different. The air was cool, fragrant with green life, and the world seemed to hush. Lysara leaned against Ethan, her head on his shoulder, her fingers twined with his. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Lysara's voice, soft and uncertain, broke the silence. "Do you think we could have had this, without the chaos? If the ancients had never made Cobalt, if there had been no war, no exile?" Ethan turned, brushing a strand of dark hair from her brow. "Not in 1,000 lifetimes," he murmured, his smile both rueful and full of wonder. "But I wouldn't trade any of it, not if it meant losing you." She looked up, the circuit patterns along her cheekbones glowing faintly in the pale light. "You're impossible, Ethan Soren," he grinned. "And you, Princess Lysara, are the bravest soul I know." Their lips met, slow, searching, a kiss that held all they had endured and all they hoped for. Lysara's hands framed his face, drawing him closer, anchoring them in a peace neither had believed possible. When they parted, it was not with regret, but with the quiet certainty of love forged in fire. "Whatever comes next," Lysara whispered, "promise me we'll face it together." Ethan pressed his forehead to hers. "Nothing will ever separate us again." The calm chimed, its tone cutting through the stillness. Mira's voice came, brisk but not urgent. "You should see this." They found Mira waiting in the command center, her expression caught between pride and disbelief. Before the central display stood Cobalt, his massive form motionless, but crimson eyes bright with intelligence. The screen flickered with images, worlds battered and barren, each petitioning for aid, each offering treaties, not ultimatums. Delegates had gathered, filling the room with a low hum of anticipation. Some wore the insignia of houses once allied with Kael's failed coalition. Others were scientists, planetary governors, envoys from backwater colonies, whose only currency was hope. Lysara stepped forward, her voice carrying across the hall. "This is only the beginning. The technology we've uncovered, gifted to us by the ancients, protected by Cobalt, can heal countless worlds, but only if it is used wisely. There will be no more exploitation, no more decrees from above." The murmurs stilled. A delegate from House Treon, his robes still dusty from the long journey, stepped into the light. "We recognize your coalition's autonomy," he declared. "In return, we ask that our world be renewed. Our rivers run dry, our children cannot breathe the air." Lysara nodded, regal and sincere. "We will aid any who come in peace. Renewal is not the privilege of the powerful, but the right of the willing." Mira tapped a control, bringing up requests from across the stars. Arcanes, where ice storms had claimed cities. Lyre, now little more than ash and bones. Some envoys wept. Others fell to their knees, not in submission, but in awe. The movement swelled. Ethan and Lysara became leaders not through conquest, but through action and promise. Each day, they negotiated peace between old enemies, oversaw the restoration of blighted worlds, and guarded the secrets of the ancients from those who would twist hope into domination. Cobalt stood always at their side, more than a beast, more than a legend. He was the living bridge between what was lost and what could be. In the quiet between crises, Ethan and Lysara found comfort in each other's arms, and in the knowledge that their partnership was reshaping the very fabric of history. Cobalt sometimes joined them on the balcony, his huge head resting on the railing, eyes reflecting the endless stars. One evening, as a gentle breeze stirred the banners below, dignitaries and scientists gathered in the courtyard. The valley was alive with music, laughter, and the hopeful arguments of old rivals learning to trust. Ethan and Lysara stood together above it all, hands linked. Below, Cobalt raised his head, crimson eyes meeting Ethan's. There was understanding in that gaze, an unspoken gratitude for the life Ethan had given him, and for the hope he now gave to all. The crowd parted around the sovereign, not in fear, but in reverence. A hush fell as the delegates knelt, each in their own way, some with heads bowed, others with hands over their hearts. It was not submission, but respect, for the beast who guarded their future, for the scientist and the princess whose bond had changed the course of the stars. Ethan squeezed Lysara's hand. "We changed the galaxy," he murmured, voice soft as the night. Lysara turned, smiling, her eyes shining with tears and fierce pride. She pressed her forehead to his, her words a vow whispered just for him. Together. Above them, the stars wheeled in slow, endless arcs, a new epic beginning, not of conquest or fear, but of healing and renewal. And at its heart, a sovereign raised from hatchling to legend, and the love that made the impossible possible. This brings our story to a close. Don't forget to hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. Our team will truly appreciate your support. There are plenty more exciting stories waiting for you on our channel. See you in the next video.